Good morning, Year 6. This is your English for Thursday the 21st of January. Your LC is, can I recognise passive verbs? This is a new skill for us. We might have only come across it in class once or twice and looked at it briefly, so we really need to focus on this one today. But I promise you, once we've gone through it, it should be straightforward for you. We use active verbs quite often, and when a sentence is in the active voice, when the subject of a sentence performs the verb's action, we say that the sentence is in the active voice. Sentences in the active voice have a strong, direct, and clear tone. And here are some short and straightforward examples of active voice. So, active voice examples, so that refers to the whole sentence. Active verbs refers to a part of the sentence, and they are in red. So, here are our examples. Monkeys adore bananas. The cashier counted the money. The dog chased the squirrel. All three sentences have a basic active voice construction. That means they have a subject, a verb, and an object. In the example above there, the dog chased the squirrel. The dog is the subject, the verb is chased, and the squirrel is the object. The subject monkey performs the action described by adore. The subject, the cashier, performs the action described by counted. The subject, the dog, performs the action described by chased. Passive voice. A sentence is in the passive voice, on the other hand, when the subject is acted on by the verb. Passive voice is actually quite easy to detect. For these examples of passive voice, we're going to transform the examples from the last slide to show the difference. So here are examples of sentences in the passive voice, and the passive verbs are in red. Bananas are adored by monkeys. The money was counted by the cashier. The squirrel was chased by the dog. Let's compare the two together so we can see them. Monkeys adore bananas becomes bananas are adored by monkeys. Notice the change, the subject and the object of the sentence. The cashier counted the money becomes the money was counted by the cashier. The dog chased the squirrel becomes the squirrel was chased by the dog. Easy, isn't it? So, the person, place or thing that would normally be the object of the active sentence becomes the subject with the use of the past participle of the verb and an auxiliary verb. Talk more about those in a moment. For example, the active sentence, I drank your juice earlier, changes to the passive sentence, the juice was drunk earlier by me. The object juice becomes the subject, drank becomes the past participle, drunk. The auxiliary verb was is added before the past participle. So that is the full explanation of things, but you can recognize it quite easily. This is the important point. Don't forget that was, were, or are some examples of auxiliary, but we also call them helper verbs. And these make identifying passive voice easier. So for example, in this sentence below, the books were read by the children. The sentence is in the passive voice. The passive verb is were read. So it's not just the verb read, we also have were as part of the passive verb as well. So don't forget were or was or are. These are also included in the passive verb. Okay. After all of that grammar talk, let's just identify all of the verbs written in the past tense. Now you can pause the video here to do this. Did you get them? Flung, forgave, were, sprang, crept, and withdrew. I would like you to identify the passive verbs in the sentence below. So notice the passive verbs. There's going to be two parts or two words from each sentence to identify. Pause the video. Did you get them? passive verb was driven in the first sentence, was broken in the second sentence. So again, both of those sentences are written in the passive voice. The passive verb is the part of the sentence that identifies it as being in the passive voice. So for example, was driven and was broken. And that's how we identify. Okay, so here's a question for you. Is the sentence below written in the active or passive voice? Big clue in 2 words in particular. The boat was sailed across the Atlantic Ocean by the captain. Passive. Why? Well, the 2 words was sailed are what identify passive voice for us there. Which sentence is written in the passive voice? Decide on one. The delicious chocolate cake was eaten by the children. The children ate the jelly and ice cream at the party. Did you get it? How were you able to identify it? The 2 words was eaten? Or our clue there? Here, I would like you to identify whether the sentences are written in the active or passive voice. A is for active, P is for passive. The dog chased the cat down the street. The cat was chased down the street. The dog ran down the street after the cat. A is in the active voice. The dog chased the cat down the street. B is in the passive voice. The cat was chased down the street. Notice how the subject and the object of the sentence have now been reversed, and we also have was chased. And lastly, the dog ran down the street after the cat is active voice. Okay, your turn now. In your VF booklet, you will find questions about passive verbs. I would like you to have a go at those. That's your first task. Your next task is coming up after the following slide. Okay, in your writing book now, I would like you to decide if the following sentences are written in active or passive voice. Underline the passive verb, and I've just put in brackets there, don't forget the helper, that's the auxiliary verb. And I won't say what those are because that will give the answers away for you, but of course you can always rewind and pause wherever you need to in this video. Your sentences are here for you. Lastly, as a challenge, I'd like you to take this sentence and rewrite it from active to passive voice. Daisy the dog ate all of the treats. So I've chosen a nice easy one there for you. That should be really easy to change from active to passive voice.